the value of the lawyer is going to become enhanced in doing more of the thoughtful judgment type tasks and less of the routine, replaceable tasks that maybe were not really practicing law.
Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian Sao.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. We're your hosts. My name is Adrian Sao.
And I'm your co-host, Joe Stevens.
In this episode, we're thrilled to welcome Marla Crawford, the General Counsel at Cimplifi, an innovative company that simplifies the eDiscovery and contract analytics process for law firms and legal departments. Marla brings over 35 years of expertise in the legal field, specializing in eDiscovery, information governance, and legal technology.
Throughout her distinguished career, Marla has served as an associate general counsel at Goldman Sachs, where she led the global eDiscovery practice and worked at Jones Day, among other prestigious roles. Her leadership in both legal and tech sectors has shaped the future of legal operations.
Marla, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us here today. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Of course. So happy to have you on. So let's take our audience right into it. Let's take us right to the beginning. What got you into law and really started your currently very well experienced career?
So my dad was a lawyer. My dad was a real people lawyer. He represented real people and real people problems. And I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time in his office watching him work and helping him where I could. And that really inspired me to want to be a lawyer. In fact, on my wall, I have a bumper sticker that he framed from one of his clients that says, "My lawyer can beat your lawyer." And I've kept that in my office, as a kind of hat tip to him and a reminder of where it all started.
Marla, can you say more about that? I'm a lawyer myself, and I actually teach at law school here in West Texas. And so I love stories like that. When you say real people lawyer, can you say more specifically about what his practice area was? And then what do you think has changed? Like, what are that feels like in a way like the heyday of the practice, or there's like some glamour associated with that time of practicing as an attorney. What's changed and how have you seen that evolve?
Well, I think I'm glorifying it a little bit, but my dad represented real people and real people problems. So, for example, the person that gave him the bumper sticker was a child who had a lawsuit against the school district for corporal punishment. So this is a long time ago, right? I'm 62 years old. So actually, I think I'm 63 now. So that was a long time ago. And my dad represented people who were in car accidents, who needed divorces, who had bankruptcies. It was really a practice where families used him for their actual day-to-day issues in the law. And it's a little glorified because that also meant that you got paid when someone had a problem and when they got paid. And so when I decided to follow in the footsteps and go to law school, he was very encouraging to me, but he said, "You're better off working in a firm with other people and not have all of the responsibilities on you yourself," because he had always been a solo practitioner. And in fact, I think when I was about 11 or 12 years old, my mother then became his assistant or secretary. So it was really a family kind of business. Um, so when I graduated from law school, I went to the biggest, baddest firm I could find in Cleveland, where we're from, and that was Jones Day.
Wow. That's a great story. And You point out something very particular there that I think a lot of people go into the industry and don't realize that there's practicing law and then there's the business of law. And understanding how to make, those you got to make revenue to be a successful law firm. What is that kind of what led you into the position of really consulting for companies and being general counsel throughout your career?
So it's exciting to be general counsel of Cimplifi because I'm also on the executive team. So I see the day to day of the running of the business of the company. And this has been a fantastic growth opportunity for me to see something new, to learn new things. After so many years practicing law, to have an opportunity where you get to open another door into your career. It's been fantastic, and I have a really strong executive team who are patient with me and explain, numbers and SG&A and all these acronyms that I've learned for the first time. So I'm really enjoying it because I'm still doing the law. I'm still doing legal technology because that is the business of our company, but I've also learned a lot about running a business. And you are right, Adrian, that it is a very different skill set.
Marla, we had another guest on this podcast who was also in-house at a tech company. And one of the areas that was actually really fascinating to explore with him was in this space, right? When you think of a tech company and you think of the innovation that there's really sort of pushing on it, that's driving their operation, sometimes that feels like it can be limited or uh, inhibited by having to run things past in-house counsel, right? Like counsel tends to be the one that is saying, hang on, we need to make sure that this is buttoned up and we need to do this first. And that is really important, but sometimes it can be seen as, at its most extreme, stifling, right? How do you see this? How do you sort of balance your job, making sure that everything is buttoned up and done the right way with encouraging and creating a really innovative environment?
I think it's important to understand why you're innovating and what the purpose is so that you can get behind it and lead to a result. So, for example, we have an offering or part of our business that is contract analytics. You have a lot of contracts, you want to understand questions about them. In the old days, you would read them, maybe you would make some notes, you would present an Excel spreadsheet to your business partner with the results of what the answers to those questions are. Um, Today, you can build AI models, run the models through the contracts, and come up with the answers in a fraction of the time and more than likely more accurately. So I use that technology in our business. We also offer that technology, but the point of it is to get to a result. So I think if you can show accuracy, efficiency, um, and time savings, in addition to dollar savings, your return on investment, then it's easy to get to the adoption of technology. When it's shown in a vacuum, when it's not tied to a result, when it's not tied to a business case, it's much more difficult.
I could definitely see that. And you mentioned the use of AI. That fascinates me. How are you currently seeing it being implemented within a company type of aspect as opposed to like a law firm?
So AI is the future. I am convinced that there is no stopping it. When I started practicing law, don't laugh, but we didn't have computers on our desks, right? So I have really seen all of the technology invade the practice of law. It's been fascinating. It has all sorts of unintended consequences. Um, and I didn't predict that AI would come to our civilization. So I was surprised to see it. And it's kind of thrilling and frightening all at the same time to watch what the AI can do and how it's going to augment and change the practice of law by human beings. In our company, we use AI in eDiscovery. Um, we use AI to review documents, um, to help our clients with chronologies and timelines, answering questions about a lot of documents, preparing for trials and depositions. We use it in the contract space to answer questions about data. We use it in the privilege arena to help find privileged documents, relevant documents, responsive documents. It's a very interesting pivot point in the practice of the law. And I feel very fortunate that I've been at this nexus of law and technology several times in my career, and that I'm still here to watch this one play out.
Marla, you talked about the length of your practice and what you've seen. I think it's such a fascinating starting point for this question, because if you began your practice at a point when computers were not on your desk, and now you're at a point where you're using artificial intelligence to sort of examine documents, you've seen the sort of scope of tech revolutions that have most upended the legal practice really in the last however long. Is this one different than those other ones? Do you liken it to anything else you've seen, or does this occupy sort of its own space in its own stratosphere?
It reminds me of the very beginning. At the very beginning, when we were building systems to review documents, it was a complete game changer. It changed the human beings involved in practicing law. All of a sudden, there were non-lawyers who were instrumental to the discovery process. It sort of changed the adversarial nature of discovery, and that you had to sort of collaborate and agree upon things as adversaries. So I think at the very beginning, when eDiscovery first began, I think that was the most monumental change one could possibly have seen. It was so, to me, it was like, the first car. You were on horses and now you're on a car. It's a whole different world. Um, So I would say maybe the last 25 years, there hadn't been anything that drastic. Now we're at the AI part of the journey, and I think this is another major game changer. Again, though, it's using technology to do things to augment humans, maybe in some cases to replace human work, maybe to elevate human work, which is what we saw, 25 years ago when it first started. But I think that this is going to have a larger impact on the nature of practicing law and what that looks like going forward in terms specifically of big firms and billing and who has which roles in the process.
You're very right. We see it every time we talk to a new guest. They're just as excited about it. They're like, we're literally in the cusp of like a golden age of technology in a way. As you mentioned earlier, it almost feels like an alien technology landed on our laps, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, now we have AI. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the procurement of any type of AI or new tools. I know you worked at Goldman Sachs for some time, and you were heavily involved with the e-discovery process and new technologies regarding law. What does that procurement process look like, and how can companies really do it effectively?
I mean, typically there's a combination of professionals. So you'll have technology people, you'll have contract people, you'll have lawyers, compliance professionals, business professionals, all coming together to vet that technology, to make sure it's secure, to make sure that there's a good use case for it, that there's going to be enough return on the investment of the money to buy it. I think it takes a collaborative approach. It's another sort of change, right, in the daily life of a corporation, is how dependent we are upon each other, and how many experts you need to make decisions, to make good decisions. So that's what I see in our clients and in our own company, that you have to have this team to really properly vet new technologies, people who understand the aspects of it that they're experts in.
Marla, something you said in your last answer kind of struck me as you were gazing ahead to the future, and what you think it's going to do disruption-wise to the legal industry. You mentioned specifically billing, you mentioned specifically like just I think something about people themselves. Where do you think this is going? I mean, what do you think some tangible changes in the next few years would look like?
What I've seen over the past 25 years since we started with technology and the law is that human value has elevated to really higher thought processes. So, when I was a young lawyer, I was looking through boxes of documents, I was putting stickers on pages, I was drawing charts, I was doing things that were really almost not lawyer tasks. And then even with a lot of the discovery process, drafting process, a lot of this is things that, lawyers would complain about, that it was grunt work, it wasn't really lawyer work, but who else was going to do it? Well, now we have something else to do it, and that's the computer. So I think that the value of the lawyer is going to become enhanced in doing more of the thoughtful judgment type tasks and less of the routine, replaceable tasks that maybe were not really practicing law exactly.
I see. So it's just going to open up, give people more bandwidth to think creatively and more strategically.
I think so. I mean, look, you can ask ChatGPT to draft a letter. You can say, draft a letter for me on a breach of contract to somebody that I was doing a deal with on this subject, and this is what they did, and draft a letter to them to cease and desist. ChatGPT is going to come back with something. You're going to have to review it. You're going to have to think about it. You're going to know this is right, this is wrong. Or even, if you use Copilot or any of these tools that you have now, it gives you a start. Maybe before you were searching on your firm's document management system, looking for some model that somebody did before. Did anyone else ever answer interrogatories on this topic before? Let me search my document management system. Or even before that, you went, to the woman down the hall and said, have you ever had a case like this before? Can I see your form file? Now, all of that you can do pretty much using the computer as your guide.
Yeah. There's other theories that I have too with this, Marla. Like, I think from the access to justice point of view, it really is transformative. And I think, you started this whole conversation with referencing your dad as a solo practitioner. I mean, it really does empower a solo practitioner in a way that I think the effects are tangible. I mean, I was reading recently about, for whatever reason, the Attica prison uprising. And I was sitting there, and the story itself is amazing, but so much of the legal minutia, I was just struck by how much more quickly and efficiently plaintiffs' counsel could have handled that if they had the technology that we have right now. So I imagine that you must sort of be, given the length of your practice, you must sort of have views on both of those things as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, we Simplified partners with Relativity's Access to Justice. So we care about access to justice very much. And it does open up opportunities for people who maybe previously couldn't afford legal representation. The one thing I have to say, though, is a lot of the cases that are coming out right now about the ethics of law and the hallucinations using AI, sometimes people are using it and not understanding how to use it, and it's not helping them, it's hurting them. And some of the cases on hallucinations right now are from pro bono plaintiffs. But putting that to the side, it is an opportunity for people to understand their rights, to get a head start, to figure out how they can help themselves and who can help them.
I know the company you currently work for specializes in eDiscovery, Right now, where do you see technology really changing the space even further? You mentioned you use AI already. How can you see it elevating maybe another level?
I think that, the technology is going to take over certain human tasks. So, when we started eDiscovery, we would have rooms full of people on review tools, on their computers, on review tools, going document by document and coding them. And at that moment, that was revolutionary because they weren't in boxes with paper clips and Post-its. Um, and then that sort of stabilized for a while. But then, there's always a drive, particular by corporates, to find a way to do things more efficiently at a lower cost. So then there was a drive to offshoring, to having document review done in countries outside the United States at lower price points. Um, then the next sort of phase in that was computer assisted or technology assisted review, human beings telling the computer, this is responsive, this is privileged, this is relevant, and then the computer looking for similar documents for the human to consider to speed the review. Now we're really at the phase where you can type in um, what your case is about, who the important players are, what you're looking for, and that's it. And then the computer's going to come back and give you the answer of these are all your relevant documents. These are things that you should look at. This is potentially privileged. So it's the next phase. And I'll tell you, I was skeptical. But I did my own project. I did a bake-off with myself. I reviewed 5,000 documents, and then I sat with our CTO and we drafted a prompt. And the computer and I disagreed on 76 documents. When I looked at those 76 documents, I had made a judgment call that had I prompted the computer with that, we would have been the same. So I've been a lawyer for 35 years. It was my review, so it's my judgment. I'm grading myself, but assuming that my standard was the standard, AI did as well as I did.
That's incredible. I mean, it really is incredible. This is okay. So the last sort of few minutes we've been talking about this, there's obviously a lot of excitement and who knows where this can go, but it's transformative. Um, what about if I sort of forced you into a position to be maybe a little bit more skeptical or express where you might be concerned or afraid of this? Is there any hesitation that you have about it? Do you think we're losing anything as a result of all of this sort of tech progress?
Well, remember, and under the ethics rules, a lawyer still has the duty to supervise. So the lawyer has a duty to supervise whether it's a junior lawyer, a paralegal, a legal ops professional, or artificial intelligence. That is still the standard for practicing law, that the lawyer signs the document responses, the interrogatories, that everything is being done according to professional rules and responsibilities. So there's still a role for the human. The computer is going to make mistakes. The computer's not going to understand your prompts. There's still that role for the human and the human oversight. And at least in my career, I don't think that's going to change. I think it still needs that QC by the human, and I can't imagine that will change, within the scope of my own personal career. I do, I think maybe you're both too young to remember 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the movie was about the computer that took over all of the human interaction, and that was quite a brilliant movie that in 2001 thought about something that could actually, be an issue today. But, I do believe that the human being will still be necessary, the judgment, the ability to make decisions, to pivot, to change your mind. Those are human qualities, and the ability to change your mind, to see something different. I think that will always, at least in my lifetime, be for a human being.
Mm.
Okay, I hope we are completely right in that too, because we could either go Space Odyssey or Terminator Skynet. So we don't really. So Marla, it sounds like the landscape is clearly changing. Technology is becoming more ingrained in our day to day, especially in law. For any young associate that's coming into the field, or maybe even a law school graduate, what do you recommend they do so that they kind of stay on this edge of technology and the intersection between that and law?
No matter what field they go into, they really should continue to learn and explore the tech, how to augment the tech as a person, how to up your game to use the technology, and then still show your own personal value in the output. This is now so firmly embedded in the practice of law that this is just the way it is now, and there's no fighting it.
Marlon, my dad started his career as a journalist, a print journalist. And he is retired and he's about to be 70 years old, 69 years old. He laments now the way people are frivolous with the words they use. And he thinks that it was a skill that was so wonderfully honed when you had to sort of be thoughtful about your word count and how you would tell a story, and that people really put value in the words they used and how they got their news and things like that. And he is those days are over, and there's no recovering that in his mind. I'm curious with you, have you seen anything as legal practice has changed over the years and the advent of technology that has given you some sort of analogous view? Do you think that some of the soft skills that you learned or that you were forced to sort of develop at a young age are gone or are devalued now, or you wish that there was more emphasis on?
I call it the professionalism of the law. So when the generations before me that I saw in the law firm, that sort of old school professionalism where you were an officer of the court, it was a very serious and weighty thing you were taking on with the transparency and honesty and the weight of the law. And I think that technology has changed that a little bit. There is, this is a little controversial, but having professionals come into the practice of the law who are not lawyers has changed a lot the tenor of the conversation, because I think there was at that time a difference when you went to law school and what you learned and what you understood to be your burden as a lawyer. Um, so I think that's changed it a little bit. I am always talking about, and maybe this is not popular, that professionalism, how we interact with each other, how we appear to each other, and that level of responsibility and professionalism of being a lawyer should not be lost.
Mm.
Very important. I would love your thoughts on this. One of our co-founders spoke recently about the TikTokification of the courtroom, where we've gone from, posing facts very eloquently, and using the correct words to now including a sense of showmanship, because the attention of people has kind of dwindled in a way, and you need to keep them hooked. Do you think this kind of takes away from the professionalism of the courtroom, or do you think it kind of helps them get to the point more in a sense of more grandeur? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the courtroom itself has always been sort of a stage, even going all the way back, if you watch the old movies, um, Nine Angry Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, all of that. It's always been a stage, a show. Um, and I think that's the case still today. Now that there are cameras in the courtrooms and, like you said, TikTok, social media, maybe it's a little bit different, but there were always the artists, the courtroom artists, and the front page news, and so I think there was always a little bit of sensationalism with trials. And I was watching the news on the Diddy trial, actually, and I was thinking about that, what you're asking me about, and wondering, if this is different or if it's not different. I don't know really the answer, but it is something worth, kind of pondering, because I was thinking to myself, well, in this case, they are not allowing cameras in the courtroom. And yet we are hearing everything that's happening. And then I was thinking, well, there are drawings and those were the same. Is this actually different, or is it the same? I don't know, but I do know we get our news now within moments of things occurring, and that doesn't give us a chance to see a full picture. Everything happens in, very quick cycles, and so we don't have the time to see a full picture, and there's often not the grace to be thoughtful about things, because you have to make these quick judgments of, snippets of information you see almost in real time.
Yeah, it sort of really changes the metric, doesn't it? Of what's at stake. Is it justice at stake, or is it theater? Is it sort of entertainment? Um, Marla, you've had such an interesting career, and I love talking to people who are in a position where they're like reflecting on all that they've seen and accomplished and done. Do you did you ever, did it take you a while to get comfortable practicing? Did you have sort of any imposter syndrome? Were you trying to live up to your dad's standard? Like, are there things like that that have been true about your practice? And I guess on the heels of that, if you look back at an early version of you in practice, is there anything that you wish you would have known sooner or done sooner, or any advice you would have given yourself?
Yeah, I definitely wish I had been more confident. So I started in big law, and I loved my firm. I've really been very fortunate, and the people I've worked with and the mentors I've had. But I will say, when I was a young lawyer, so I was in my 20s, there weren't a lot of women practicing law. There were a lot more women, but the generation ahead of me, they were really more the pioneers than my generation, but there still weren't all that many. And remember, like, when I started practicing law, like, you couldn't wear pants. So, like, women were wearing skirts and, pantyhose to court, and you couldn't even wear pants. It was totally a different time. But I did have someone who was my boss at the time tell me I wouldn't be successful because my voice was too high and my office was too neat. And now I would have told him what to do with himself, and I think that there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, like, not being confident, not sure you know what you're doing, being worried. I think it's more common, especially for women. And when I talk to a lot of women, it's sort of like my little side hustle is doing female leadership things, and I tell them the story of what just happened to me now at this age in my life, where I was 57 years old, and I got this call from our executive chairman to come and be general counsel of this company. 57 years old, 22 years at Jones Day, 11 at Goldman Sachs. And my response was, "Oh, gee, I don't know. Am I ready?" And to his credit, he said, "If you're not ready now, then when will you be ready?" Because, as he pointed out nicely, I was running out of road. So if I wasn't ready now, like, what was I going to do? But we I mean, I don't think it's just an issue for females. I think everyone has these issues, but particularly with women, I think women feel they have to do everything perfectly, know how to do everything perfectly before they're ready to take a leap. So I would say if I had to talk to my younger self, I would tell myself to be more confident and to trust my judgment, to trust my mind, and that I would know what I was doing.
You mentioned, women in leadership. It's so important. What do you think the legal community could do to really foster more women in leadership roles across the board?
I mean, that's a hard question. The thing that I've been very fortunate is that I've had both male and female mentors who really, really helped me. So what we have to do is we have to help each other. We have to lend a hand, bring the next person up. There are two kinds of people, in my view, in the world. There are those who went through really, really hard times accomplishing something and think that if I went through it, then you should have to do the same. And then there are other people who say, I went through really hard times and I've accomplished something and I want to make it easier for you. And I think that we should try to get our heads around being that second type of person where maybe we figured something out, we learned something, how to do something, how to accomplish something. We've reached some degree of success. And so we should pass those tools on to the next generation so it's easier for them.
Marla, can you say more about, you said it's sort of a side project or a side passion of yours. To what degree is it? And what does that mean? What is it that you're doing or in that field? I'm curious.
So I'm in a few different organizations that think and talk about women in the law, women in eDiscovery, Operation Safe Spaces, creating safe spaces at conferences, um, and uh, and I'm on the board of a couple of different legal technology organizations where we think about that when we think about programming and content. I talk to a lot of people. Anyone who wants to reach out to me, I speak to everyone who connects with me on LinkedIn or just want to, run something by me. So I try to do what I can to help the next group of people who are going to be tomorrow's leaders.
That's so great, and I absolutely love that. I know you also have you're a member of you're chief of the College of Law Practice Management. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The College of Law Practice Management is a group of legal professionals and operations around the law. So not necessarily lawyers. It can be business, marketing, technology. It can be lawyers who think about the advancements in the practice of law itself. It is a fantastic group of people. There's a website, College of Law Practice Management, and it's an organization where you have to be nominated and then accepted into the organization. But nominations are actually opening this month, so anyone who wants to join can submit an application. There's a yearly meeting. I think this coming year it'll be in February in New York. It's a great conference to go to. You don't have to be a member or, as they call it, a fellow to attend.
It's incredible, Marla. So I'm sure Adrian's getting ready at some point to ask you about the hot take. And I don't want to jump on that. I've never actually asked this question before. But in advance of your hot take that is going to be, I'm spicy hot, I imagine. I kind of want to get a little philosophical with you for a second. I'm curious, like, what, having seen the evolution of your practice change and some things stay the same and skills get better or stronger or whatever it might be, is there some sort of like skill or virtue, like just that you think is still something that is not going to change that will lead to success in this practice? Like, someone who knows how to listen, someone like things like that. Is there something that you feel like is just more and more important now than it was before, or just remains unchanged in how important it is?
Always having good judgment. So to me, the core of being a lawyer, the core of being a counselor is to have good judgment. You have to probably be born with a little bit of good judgment, have some sort of ethics and morals and responsibility in your formative years. But then I think it's really something you hone over the years. That judgment, that advice. How do you counsel? How do you advise? To me, that is the core of being a lawyer, and something that's always in my mind since I became a lawyer is that how am I exercising my judgment? How am I getting smarter at giving opinions? How am I getting better at advising people? And a lot of that is something you really have to learn over the years, but I think it can't be replaced. That is something that technology can't substitute, or at least as far as I can tell so far.
It's a great answer. Well, this perfectly opens up the question. Marla, what is your hottest take on the industry right now?
My hottest take on the industry right now is to adopt and adapt. There is no stopping this machine. When I was a younger lawyer, when eDiscovery started, I spoke at an ABA meeting in Albany, New York, about this new eDiscovery thing that was coming. And an older gentleman in the audience stood up screaming at me with a piece of paper in his hand. Are you trying to tell me that there's something that you call a document that isn't this? And I said, well, yes, sir. That's it. There's no stopping this train. This is coming. This is here. Adopt and adapt. Anyone who's trying to hold on to the past is going to be left behind.
You heard it here first. Love that hot take. It's fantastic.
It's great.
Well, thank you so much to our audience for tuning into Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. A special thanks to our guest, Marla Crawford, for sharing her invaluable insights on legal technology, eDiscovery, and the future of legal operations. And of course, a big thank you to my co-host, Joe Stevens, for another fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. This was a great one for sure. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions at the intersection of law, technology, and innovation. We'll see you next time.
See ya. Up next on Between the Briefs.
I show small wins, and I'm not quiet about my wins. If somebody isn't going to give you a voice, you have to take your own voice. You have to fight your own. No one's going to give you a seat at the table. You have to go and grab your seat at the table.
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.